important things that I've learned over the 40 years of studying martial art is that the philosophy, for me, is even more important than the techniques themselves. Although the techniques enable us to defend ourselves, our greatest enemy really is within. We have to learn how to overcome our weaknesses and our fears and our anxieties and stress that we bring upon ourselves. A lot of the students are always asking me how I came about developing this philosophy of mine that I term not worrying, which is one of the great diseases of, I think, mankind. And as many of my students know now, after all these years of my preaching, that I don't worry. I just do not worry. It's a waste of my time, and it's a waste of your time. And the reason I came upon this was, is it still working? No, I'm sorry. The reason I came upon this so-called philosophy of mine was because 30 years ago, there was a lady named Mrs. Barnett. I was doing a little gardening work in her backyard, and I asked her a question. I said, Mrs. Barnett, if you had your life to lead all over again, what would you change? She was 87 years old. And she looked at me and she said, you know, Mitz, that's a good question. If I can go back and change one thing, let me think. She said, well, if I can go back, she said, I don't think I would worry as much. She said, I spent 87 years of my life worrying about things that either didn't happen, or if they did happen, they were resolved, whatever the problems were. I was worried about my family. I was worried about whether or not my children were going to have a good education, have enough money to pay for the education. And when the time came, she said we had more than enough money for that. I worried whether or not my husband and I, having bought a business, we were going to be able to make the payments, monthly payments, or whether we were going to make any money on the business. And at the end of 15 years, we sold it, business at a tremendous profit. So there was another worry that she said dissipated. The last thing she told me was, I worried whether or not I'd be able to make the mortgage payments on this home that we purchased. And for 30 years, whether or not I was going to be able to make the payments. And she said, well, the house is paid for. My husband is now gone. My kids are all gone. And she says, I look back there and I sit on that rocker and I look at the backyard and I really wonder why I spent a large majority of my time worrying about nothing. So she told me back then, she said, Mitz, you tell your students, this is from an old lady, take it whichever way they want to, but to know that worrying is really a waste of their time, and that it's a useless thing to do. At that time, I thought, you know, this is from an old lady. She's kind of, you know, yeah, I'll just listen to her, but I didn't really accept it. So for the next 30 years, I continued to worry. But then the way I stopped worrying was about 10 years ago when I went through a divorce, at which time was very traumatic, and I did a lot of worrying, and I spent a lot of nights kind of just wondering where I was going to go, what I was going to do. My lifestyle was going to change quite a bit. So I was just panicking, and I'd wake up in the middle of the night, sometimes with anxiety attacks, and I thought I was going to have a heart attack. But by the end of the year, I had my own place to stay, I had my money, things that I was concerned about really didn't materialize. And when the New Year ball came down at my friend's apartment, we were watching TV, and the New Year ball came down, I was there yelling Happy New Year with everyone else. And then I told myself, or I stopped myself, and I said, Mitz, why, if you worried the entire year, are you yelling Happy New Year now? And then it dawned on me that I did waste the entire year. I didn't do what Mrs. Barnett told me 30 years ago. She's just not worried, that things always worked out. And she was right. Things did work out. And from that moment on, I told myself I'm not going to worry anymore. And in essence, I haven't. And so that's the message I try to impart to the students, that whatever your problems are tonight, whatever you're worried about tonight, 6 months from now, it won't matter. A year from now, it won't have the impact that it has now. So whatever it is, if you're thinking that worry resolves problems, you're mistaken. because it just compounds problems. It's like throwing gasoline on fire. It just makes it worse. So if you can practice or develop the ability or the habit of not worrying, because worrying is a habit. You are taught how to worry. You can unlearn how to worry. So by just a simple process of every day, whatever problem you have, if you'll say to yourself, in the past when I had problems, did worry help the solution? I mean, did it resolve the problem? And if you're honest, you'll say no, it didn't. But like all the problems you've had in the past, if you'll look back honestly, you'll say, well, I can't really recall what they were anymore. I can't remember what they were. And so they really have no importance. So my feeling now for everyone is that it's a waste of your time to worry. And so it's like anything, if you want to get good at it, to get rid of the habit of worrying, you practice every day. And every time you have what appears to be a worry, and only you know, each individual has their own mechanism that tells them they're worrying, you have to stop at that point. Tell yourself, I'm worrying, and then resolve that. Resolve it by to stop worrying. Students will tell me, or ask me anyway, how do you do it? You just stop. You just stop worrying. And so that's my message. That's what I live by. And because of that, my life is now a piece of cake. I have no problems. Although in essence, in the material world, I do have problems, but in the spiritual or mental world, I have no problems at all. My life is a piece of cake, and it's because I've learned the art of not worrying. And as martial artists, we have to develop that philosophy and we have to develop that discipline to all stop worrying. So that's my message for the night.